The deadline set for the Iran nuclear deal expires today, Tuesday, but there are no signs yet that the sides are anywhere near reaching an agreement. But going into the meeting with his Russian counterpart around an hour ago, the Iranian foreign minister seemed to be in the best of moods nonetheless. Of course, as those cameras clicked away, then it was down to business. Well, according to earlier comments from the Iranian foreign minister, some progress had been made in the talks, which may explain his high spirits there.
I feel the negotiations have reached a very sensitive stage. And at this stage, with political will, determination and lots of work, progress is possible.
However, all sides have signalled that they will most likely miss the deadline set for today, with the media swiftly picking up that message. Artist Polly Boyka is following the nuclear talks in Vienna. Then she says journalists are bracing themselves for days of waiting.
Well, with the international media camped out here in Vienna and the talks having gone into overtime, with journalists waiting for news to trickle in from the negotiations, we thought we'd give you a bit of a behind-the-scenes look into the media operation behind what could be a historic nuclear deal. Now, if you take a look over here, we've got the satellite trucks, and on top, the satellite dishes. They are working very hard to beam images of what's taking place across the globe to your very TV sets. And if you take a look down here, you've got miles of wires stretching from these trucks over to the Palace Coburg. That is the hotel where the international delegations are meeting, trying to thrash out that nuclear deal. Now, when it comes to the journalists, no, they're not in the luxury hotel. They are in this big white tent. They're filing their articles and waiting for news to come in from what's taking place at the negotiations. And we thought we'd have a chat to them to try and get their take on how long they think all this is going to take.
Actually, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Russia yesterday told me, Mr. Ryabkov, that we are going to stay till Friday minimum and maybe longer. And I actually do think that we are going to stay in between a week or 10 days more.
This is definitely a dramatic time. It's definitely crunch time. Yeah, it's at the point of deal or no deal.
And that's just the thing. Nobody here knows exactly how long these negotiations are going to go on for and if they're going to result in a deal, given the stumbling blocks that remain. But one thing's for sure is that this media circus isn't going anywhere, at least until there's some sort of result. Reporting from Vienna, I'm Polly Boyka.
When Iran and world powers reached their preliminary deal back in April, following those marathon talks that ran through the night, then it was hailed as a milestone and a big breakthrough by many.
No question. The United States could be entering a new era in its relationship with Iran.
Historic breakthrough with Iran.
A historic understanding.
Quite a significant accomplishment.
President Obama says it will make the world a safer place.
However, the very next day, after celebrations over the breakthrough, it appeared the negotiators understood the deal quite differently.
This relief will be phased as Iran takes steps to adhere to the deal. If Iran violates the deal, sanctions can be snapped back into place.
According to international law, the U.S. administration will be responsible for and obliged to lift the sanctions at once. If anybody is talking about the gradual lifting of sanctions, beware that they are going against what has been agreed so far.
The timing of when sanctions will be lifted is the main stumbling block, but others too, including inspections of the Iranian nuclear facilities. Now, Tehran strongly opposes the idea of installing cameras, for instance, security cameras there to keep check. It also doesn't want its stockpiles of enriched uranium to be shipped abroad either. Well, some of the delegates signalled that they're willing to stand by their key demands too, even if it means no agreement at all end of the day after all this.
No deal is better than a bad deal. There are red lines that we cannot cross.
That was Britain's foreign minister who was speaking as he arrived in Vienna. His mention of a bad deal somewhat echoed what the Israeli leader's been saying for months now about any agreement with Iran, which Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated as the deadline approached.
אין שום סיבה להזדרז לחתום על ההסכם הרע הזה שנעשה גרוע מדי יום.
Well, to discuss the Iranian nuclear talks and the looming deadline now, let's cross to Dr. Hushang Amir Ahmadi. He's president of the American-Iranian Council, joining us live on RT International. Sir, hi there. Well, look, you're looking very closely at this, of course. What's your best judgment of what's going to happen here? Do you think this deadline is going to be met or missed as it stands at the moment?
Well, this self-imposed deadline will be most likely missed. I don't believe there will be another deadline set, and they will keep negotiation flooding as well as the day they may reach an agreement, meaning that we will not expect another deadline, but we will expect a continuation of this negotiation in the next few days, weeks, perhaps months. So that's what my take is at this point. But then again, on both sides have always surprised us, and particularly the Iranian side, which is always the government of last minute. They may come back and surprise everybody with a new idea.
Do you think the will is there by all parties to get this sorted out? I mean, obviously every side wants the best deal they can get. Both sides want the best deal they can get. But is the will there, or is the will waning as this goes on and on?
Well, obviously, there must be some level of political will there, because they have been negotiating intensely for almost 2 years now. I have always said and continue to believe that the American side want Iran's nuclear facilities melted gradually out, and along with that, a gradual lifting of sanctions take place. I don't believe that they really are prepared for a quote-unquote comprehensive deal that will lock up all kinds of details for, let's say, 10, 15 years. That's not the way Americans really behave in international relations. They just don't, they have never wanted to be locked up to a particular situation, particularly when it comes to a multilateral situation where you have the UN and all members of the Security Council and permanent members. So again, yes, there is some kind of a political will, at least halfway, but I think that will is not fully for a comprehensive deal, but rather for melting this problem away gradually.
Final thought, the main stalling points here in the negotiations are, as you see them?
Well, I mean, obviously on both sides, the US and Iran have claimed that there has been different understanding in Lausanne. For one thing, Lausanne was not an agreement, it was an understanding. And second, that understanding was very different in Washington and Tehran. And so what you see now is that differences in understanding, and then because there was not agreement, nobody is hold on to this, any particular parameter, so-called, that they have agreed to, particularly on the issues of inspection of the Iranian military side, interviewing Iranian scientists, and lifting of sanctions gradually or at once. So, and also there are problems with the level and of the restrictions that the 5+1 wants to put on Iran's, R&D, nuclear R&D, research and development, and the function of the Fardo underground site. So there are lots of holes out there, and all of this, emotional, sensational statements are designed to set the stage for some kind of a public environment, as opposed to something that really actually is happening there. Understood. I have to say, unfortunately, both sides have been lying to publics extensively over the last 2 years about what really actually happens in Lausanne, Geneva, or in Vienna.
Doctor, sorry to interrupt. We're a little out of time. We could talk about this so much more. I'll let you go and get your front door. I think the postman might be there. Thank you for your time, Dr. Houshang Ahmadi, founder and president of the American Iranian Council. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.